John O'Reilly hoisted his beer and said, "Here's to spending the rest of my life between the legs of my wife." That won him the top prize at the pub for the best toast of the night. He went home and told his wife, Mary, "I won the prize for the best toast of the night." She said, "Aye, did you now? And what was your toast?" John said, "Here's to spending the rest of my life sitting in church beside my wife." "Oh, that is very nice indeed, John," Mary said. The next day, Mary ran into one of John's drinking buddies on the street corner. The man chuckled leeringly and said, "John won the prize the other night at the pub with a toast about you, Mary." She said, "He told me, and I was a bit surprised myself. You know, he's only been there twice in the last 4 years. Once he fell asleep, and the other time I had to pull him by the ears to make him come." A man boards an airplane and takes his seat. As he settles in, he glances up and sees a very beautiful woman boarding the plane. He soon realizes she is heading straight towards his seat, and a wave of nervous anticipation washes over him. Lo and behold, she takes the seat right beside his. Eager to strike up a conversation, he blurts out, "Business trip or vacation?" The woman turns, smiles, and says, "Business. I'm going to the annual Nymphomaniac convention in Chicago." The man swallows hard and is instantly crazed with excitement. Struggling to maintain his outward cool, he calmly asks, "What's your business role at this convention?" "Lecturer," she says. "I use my experience to debunk some of the popular myths about sexuality." "Really?" he says. "What myths are those?" "Well," she explains, "one popular myth is that African American men are the most well-endowed, when in fact, it is the Native American Indian who is most likely to possess that trait. Another popular myth is that French men are the best lovers, when actually it's men of Jewish descent." Suddenly, the woman becomes very embarrassed and blushes. "I'm sorry," she says. "I shouldn't be discussing this with you. I don't even know your name." "Tonto," the man says as he extends his hand. "Tonto Goldstein." A taxi pulls up to a church and picks up a nun. "Where are you headed?" the taxi driver asks. "Fifth Street and Main," the nun replies. Considering the long distance to where the nun wanted to go, the driver asks the nun, "So if you're a nun, what would it take for a man to have?" The nun thinks about it and says, "He would have to have no kids, be single, and be a Christian." The taxi driver then says, "Well, you're in luck because I'm all of those things." The nun looks around and gets into the front seat. After they have finished, the taxi driver says gloatingly, "Ha ha, I'm married and I have kids and I'm a Jew." The nun replies, "Well, that's okay because my name is Henry and I'm headed to a costume party." The Lone Ranger and Tonto are camping in the desert, set up their tent and fall asleep. Some hours later, the Lone Ranger wakes his faithful friend. "Tonto, look up at the sky and tell me what you see." Tonto replies, "I see millions of stars." "What does that tell you?" asks the Lone Ranger. Tonto ponders for a minute. "Astronomically speaking, it tells me that there are millions of galaxies and potentially billions of planets. Astrologically, it tells me that Saturn is in Leo. Chronologically, it appears to be approximately 3:15. Theologically, it's evident the Lord is all-powerful, and we are small and insignificant. Meteorologically, it seems we will have a beautiful day tomorrow. What does it tell you, Kimosabi?" The Lone Ranger is silent for a moment, then speaks. "Tonto, you stolen our tent." A guy walks into a bar with an octopus. He sits the octopus on a stool and announces that this is a very talented octopus, which can play any musical instrument in the world. Everyone laughs at the man, calling him an idiot. So he says that he'll wager 50 pounds to anyone who has an instrument that the octopus can't play. A guy walks up with a guitar and puts it beside the octopus. Immediately, the octopus picks up the guitar and starts playing better than Eric Clapton. The guitar man pays up his 50 pounds. Another guy comes up with a trumpet. This time the octopus plays like Miles Davis. This guy pays his 50 pounds. Then a Scotsman hands over a set of bagpipes. The octopus fumbles with it for a minute and then sits down with a confused look. "Ha," the Scot says. "Can you not play it?" The octopus looks at him and says, "Play it? I'm going to do it as soon as I figure out how to get these pajamas off." A father and his son go into the grocery store when they happen upon the condom aisle. The son asks his father why there are so many different boxes of condoms. The father replies, "Well, you see that 3-pack? That's for when you're in high school. You have 2 for Friday night and 1 for Saturday night. The son then asks his father, what's the six-pack for? The father replies, well, that's for when you're in college. You have 2 for Friday night, 2 for Saturday night, and 2 for Sunday morning. Then the son asks his father what the 12-pack is for. The father replies, well, that's for when you're married. You have 1 for January, 1 for February, 1 for March, 1 for... A cowboy walked into a barber shop, sat on the barber's chair, and said, I'll have a shave and a shoe shine. The barber began to lather his face and sharpen the old straight edge while a woman with the biggest, firmest, most beautiful breasts that he had ever seen knelt down and began to shine his shoes. The cowboy said, young lady, you and I should go and spend some time in a hotel room. She replied, I'm married and my husband wouldn't like that. The cowboy said, tell him you're working overtime and I'll pay you the difference. She said, you tell him, he's the one shaving you. A tourist is in Spain and goes to a fancy restaurant for dinner. As he looks around, he notices a diner being served, a beautifully garnished dish with 2 gigantic meatballs in the middle. When the waiter asks him for his order, the man asks him about the meatball dish. The waiter explains that the meatballs are bull's testicles, and when the bull loses the bullfight, the bull is brought to the restaurant, and this beautiful dish is made. The diner tells the waiter that he wants the bull's testicles for dinner, but the waiter tells him that only 1 bull a day is brought to the restaurant, but he can have it tomorrow. The diner agrees. The next day, the diner goes to the restaurant and orders the testicle dish. When his food is brought out, he notices that the meatballs are extremely small. He mentions this to the waiter, and the waiter replies, well, sir, you have to understand, sometimes the bull wins. Jim and Edna were both patients in a mental hospital. One day, while they were walking past the hospital swimming pool, Jim suddenly jumped into the deep end. He sank to the bottom of the pool and stayed there. Edna promptly jumped in to save him. She swam to the bottom and pulled Jim out. When the hospital director became aware of Edna's heroic act, she immediately ordered that Edna be discharged from the hospital because she now considered Edna to be mentally stable. The director went to Edna and said, I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is that you're being discharged because you responded so rationally to a crisis by jumping in the pool to save the life of another patient. Your action displays sound-mindedness. The bad news is that Jim, the patient you saved, hung himself in the bathroom with his bathrobe belt right after you saved him. I'm so sorry, but he's dead. Edna replied, he didn't hang himself. I put him there to dry. How soon can I go home? This blonde decides one day that she is sick and tired of all these blonde jokes and how all blondes are perceived as stupid. So she decides to show her husband that blondes really are smart. While her husband is off at work, she decides that she's going to paint a couple of rooms in the house. The next day, right after her husband leaves for work, she gets down to the task at hand. Her husband arrives home at 5:30 and smells the distinctive smell of paint. He walks into the living room and finds his wife lying on the floor in a pool of sweat. He notices that she is wearing a ski jacket and a fur coat at the same time. He goes over and asks her if she is okay. She replies yes. He asks what she is doing. She replies that she wanted to prove to him that not all blonde women are dumb, and she wanted to do it by painting the house. He then asks her why she has a ski jacket over her fur coat. She replies that she was reading the directions on the paint can, and they said, for best results, put on 2 coats. I was pulled over while driving the Lamborghini. A female officer approached my driver's door and said the reason she had pulled me over was because my license light bulb was not working. I knew the reason she pulled me over was because she just wanted to run my license and registration to see if I had any warrants or such. I was pretty calm while she went back to her patrol car, and we sat there about 10 minutes before she returned. Well, the big dyke-looking cow hands me a ticket. I was stunned. I asked her how she could ascertain how long my bulb had been out, as it is quite possible the bulb was working when I left the house. If that is a possibility, then how can she write a ticket? She responded that she didn't give a damn when it burned out, as it was not working now. I mentioned that the lights were all functioning when I got a state inspection less than 3 weeks ago. Once again, she said she didn't care. I then asked why I couldn't receive a warning ticket, since this was such a minor offense. She replied that she did not issue warning tickets. Her partner, a male, just shook his head and shrugged. Well, I told her she was being rather less than helpful to a citizen of her fair city. She replied that she didn't need to be helpful to someone that had broken the law. With that, I snapped. I asked her how many tickets she had to write before the department issued her a penis. Her partner burst out laughing. My friend stared at me in disbelief, and the stupid fat ass dyke cop just turned and waddled away. I still smile when I recall the look on her face. Of course, she still had the last laugh. The damn ticket cost me $98. Two physicians board a flight out of Seattle. One sits in the window seat, the other in the middle seat. Just before takeoff, an attorney sits in the seat by the aisle. The lawyer kicks off his shoes, wiggles his toes, and starts to settle in when the physician in the window seat says, "I think I'll get up and get a Coke." "No problem," says the attorney. "I'm by the aisle. I'll get it for you." While he's gone, one of the physicians picks up the attorney's shoe and spits in it. When he returns with the Coke, the other physician says, "That looks good. I think I'll have one too." Again, the attorney obligingly fetches the drink. While he's gone, the other physician picks up the other shoe and spits in it. The lawyer comes back and they all sit back and enjoy the flight. As the plane is landing, however, the attorney slips his feet into his shoes and realizes immediately what has happened. "How long must this go on?" he asks the physicians. "This fighting between our professions? This hatred, this animosity, this spitting in shoes and pissing in Cokes?" A bus carrying only ugly people crashes into an oncoming truck, and everyone inside dies. They then get to meet their maker, and because of the grief they have experienced, he decides to grant them one wish each before they enter paradise. They're all lined up, and God asks the first one what the wish is. "I want to be gorgeous." And so God snaps his fingers, and it is done. The second one in line hears this and says, "I want to be gorgeous too." Another snap of his fingers, and the wish is granted. This goes on for a while, but when God is halfway down the line, the last guy in line starts laughing. When there are only 10 people left, this guy is rolling on the floor, laughing. Finally, God reaches this guy and asks him what his wish will be. The guy calms down and says, "Make them all ugly again." A teacher asks her class of third graders to use the word fascinate in a sentence. She calls on a small boy sitting in the front row. "I saw an air show, and it was very fascinating." "Good, but I wanted you to use the word fascinate, not fascinating." She then calls on a girl sitting off to the left. "I saw some monkeys. They were very fascinating." "Good, but I wanted you to use the word fascinate, not fascinating." Billy's hand shoots up into the air and she calls on him. "Teacher, teacher, I got one." "Go ahead, Billy. My sister's shirt has 10 buttons, but big she can only fascinate." One night, a man dropped his pants and placed his hand on his package, getting ready for some fun right in front of his wife. The wife looked at him, sighed, pulled down her pants, placed her hand on her place, and said, "Look at this idiot. There's a washing machine right in front of him, and he's still washing clothes by hand." Two couples were playing poker one evening. Steve accidentally dropped some cards on the floor. When he bent down under the table to pick them up, he noticed Bill's wife, Sue, wasn't wearing any underwear under her dress. Shocked by this, Steve, upon trying to sit back up again, hit his head on the table and emerged red-faced. Later, Steve went to the kitchen to get some refreshments. Bill's wife followed and asked, "Did you see anything that you liked under there?" Surprised by her boldness, Steve courageously admitted that, well, indeed he did. She said, "Well, you can have it, but it will cost you $500. After taking a minute or two to assess the financial and moral costs of this offer, Steve confirms that he is interested. She tells him that since her husband Bill works Friday afternoons and Steve doesn't, Steve should be at her house around 2 p.m. Friday afternoon. When Friday rolled around, Steve showed up at Bill's house at 2 p.m. sharp, and after paying Sue the agreed sum of $500, they went to the bedroom and closed their transaction as agreed. Steve quickly dressed and left. As usual, Bill came home from work at 6 p.m. and, upon entering the house, asked his wife abruptly, "Did Steve come by the house this afternoon?" With a lump in her throat, Sue answered, "Why, yes, he did stop by for a few minutes this afternoon." Her heart nearly skipped a beat when her husband curtly asked, "And did he give you $500? In terror, she assumed that somehow he had found out, and after mustering her best poker face, replied, "Well, yes, in fact, he did give me $500. Bill, with a satisfied look on his face, surprised his wife by saying, "Good, I was hoping he did." Steve came by the office this morning and borrowed $500 from me. He promised me he'd stop by our house this afternoon on his way home and pay me back. Three sisters ages 72, 74, and 76 lived in a house together. One night, the 76-year-old drew a bath. She put her foot in and paused. She yelled down the stairs, "Was I getting into or out of the bath?" The 74-year-old yelled back, "I don't know. I'll come up and see." She started up the stairs and paused. Then she yelled, "Was I going up the stairs or down?" The 72-year-old sat at the kitchen table having tea, listening to her sisters. She shook her head sadly and said, "I sure hope I never get that forgetful." She knocked on wood for good measure. She then yelled, "I'll come up and help both of you as soon as I see who's at the door." Jeff walks into a bar and sees his friend Paul slumped over the bar. He walks over and asks Paul what's wrong. "Well," replies Paul, "you know that beautiful girl at work that I wanted to ask out, but I got an erection every time I saw her?" "Yes," replies Jeff with a laugh. "Well," says Paul, straightening up, "I finally plucked up the courage to ask her out, and she agreed." "That's great," says Jeff. "When are you going out?" "I went to meet her this evening," continues Paul, "but I was worried I'd again. So I got some duct tape and taped my to my leg, so if I did, it wouldn't show." "Sensible," says Jeff. "So I get to her door," says Paul, "and I rang her doorbell. She answered it in the sheerest, tiniest dress you ever saw." "And what happened then?" Paul slumps back over the bar again. "I kicked her in the face." A woman is in a coma. The nurses are in her room giving her a sponge bath. One of them is washing her private area and notices that there is a response on the monitor when she touches her. They go to her husband, Steve, and explain what happened, telling him, "Crazy as this sounds, maybe a little will do the trick and bring her out of the coma." Steve is skeptical, but they assure him that they'll close the curtains for privacy. Besides, it's worth a try. Steve finally agrees and goes into his wife's room. After a few minutes, the woman's monitor flatlines. No pulse, no heart rate. The nurses run into the room. Steve is standing there and says, "I think she choked." A blonde wanting to earn some money decided to hire herself out as a handyman type and started canvassing a wealthy neighborhood. She went to the front door of the first house and asked the owner if he had any jobs for her to do. "Well, you can paint my porch. How much will you charge?" The blonde said, "How about $50? The man agreed and told her that the paint and ladders that she might need were in the garage. The man's wife inside the house heard the conversation and said to her husband, "Does she realize that the porch goes all the way around the house?" The man replied, "She should. She was standing on the porch." A short time later, the blonde came to the door to collect her money. "You're finished already?" he asked. "Yes," the blonde answered, "and I had paint left over, so I gave it 2 coats." Impressed, the man reached in his pocket for the $50. "And by the way," the blonde added, "that's not a Porsche, it's a Ferrari." A company feeling it was time for a shakeup hires a new CEO. This new boss is determined to rid the company of all slackers. On a tour of the facilities, the CEO notices a guy leaning on a wall. The room is full of workers, and he wants to let them know he means business. The CEO walks up to the guy and asks, "And how much money do you make a week?" A little surprised, the young fellow looks at him and replies, "I make $300 a week, why?" The CEO then hands the guy $1,200 in cash and screams, "Here's 4 weeks' pay. Now get out and don't come back." Feeling pretty good about his first firing, the CEO looks around the room and asks, "Does anyone want to tell me what that goof-off did here?" With a sheepish grin, one of the other workers mutters, "Pizza delivery guy from Domino's." A lady walked into a Ferrari dealership to browse and spotted the most beautiful, perfectly loaded Ferrari, 360 Modena, and walked over to inspect it closer. As she bent forward to feel the fine leather upholstery, an unexpected little burst of flatulence escaped her. Very embarrassed, she anxiously looked around to see if anyone had noticed. Sure enough, there, standing behind her, was a salesman. With a pleasant smile, he greeted her. "Good day, madam. How may we help you today?" Trying to maintain an air of sophistication and acting as though nothing had happened, she smiled back and asked, "Sir, what is the price of this lovely vehicle?" Still smiling pleasantly, he replied, "Madam, I'm very sorry to say, if you farted just touching it, you're going to shit when you hear the price." A businessman enters a tavern, sits down at the bar, and orders a double martini on the rocks. After he finishes the drink, he peeks inside his shirt pocket, then orders the bartender to prepare another double martini. After he finishes that, he again peeks inside his shirt pocket and orders the bartender to bring another double martini. The bartender says, "Look, buddy, I'll bring you martinis all night long, but you have to tell me why you look inside your shirt pocket before you order a refill." The customer replies, "I'm peeking at a photo of my wife. When she starts to look good, I know it's time to go home." A 75-year-old man went to his doctor's office to get a sperm count. The doctor gave the man a jar and said, "Take this jar home and bring me back a sample tomorrow." The next day, the 75-year-old man reappears at the doctor's office and gives him the jar, which is as clean and empty as on the previous day. The doctor asks what happened, and the man explains, "Well, doc, it's like this. First, I tried with my right hand, but nothing. Then I tried with my left hand, but nothing. Then I asked my wife for help. She tried with her right hand, but nothing. Then her left, but nothing. She even tried with her mouth, first with the teeth in, then with the teeth out, and still nothing. Hell, we even called up the lady next door, and she tried with both hands and her mouth too, but nothing." The doctor was shocked. "You asked your neighbor?" The old man replied, "Yep, but no matter what we tried, we couldn't get the damn jar open." A police officer was on patrol at night and saw two men fighting in the middle of the street in front of a house. He flashed his police lights, hopped out of the car, and pulled the two men apart. He cuffed them both and sat them apart from each other on the sidewalk. "Enough! Explain what is going on here," the policeman said to the first man. "Well," the first man sighed, "it all started a few nights ago when I thought my girlfriend was cheating on me. I came round to her place to surprise her and found her watching a movie with two suspiciously empty pizza boxes next to her. She said she was just hungry, but who the hell orders two large pizzas for themselves?" "A valid point," the policeman nodded. "Anyway," the first man continued, "I decided to stake out her house. So I'm waiting here out in the street, watching to see if anyone goes into that pink house on the other side of the road. I have my maid at the pizza shop deliver me a pizza while I wait. Everything's quiet, and I'm just about to start eating my pizza until I see that dickhead over there come creeping around the side of the house." "That man over there?" the policeman asked. "Yes." So naturally, I confronted him, and he denied seeing my girl. Next thing you know, we're in the middle of a brawl, and then you arrive." The policeman thought for a moment, then undid the cuffs. "Here's the deal. Give me your pizza, and I'll let you drive away with a warning." The first man nodded grumpily, hopped in his car, and drove off. The policeman placed the pizza in his car and then walked over to the second man. "That guy says you're sleeping with his girlfriend," the policeman stated. "I did no such thing," the second man roared. "So what were you doing?" the policeman asked. "Well," the second man mumbled, "darn, you'll catch me anyways when you search me." "All right, I was trying to rob the place." "That's hardly any better," the policeman replied. "The windows were locked up tight, so I decided to give up. Next thing I know, some guy is screaming at me and saying I'm having a thing with his girl. We ended up in a fight. Then you turn up." "Empty your pockets," the policeman said. The second man pulled out lock-picking tools, a skeleton key, and a pair of diamond earrings from the last house he had robbed. "I'll take those," the policeman said. "But because I'm in a good mood, I'll let you go." The second man couldn't believe his luck. He skipped away down the street. Suddenly, the lights at the front of the house turned on. A woman came marching out. "What the hell is going on out here?" she asked the police officer. The policeman turned around. "Nothing, babe. Just got you a pizza and some new jewelry." A young blonde was on vacation in the depths of Louisiana. She wanted a pair of genuine alligator shoes in the worst way, but was very reluctant to pay the high prices the local vendors were asking. After becoming very frustrated with the no-haggle attitude of one of the shopkeepers, the blonde shouted, "Maybe I'll just go out and catch my own alligator so I can get a pair of shoes at a reasonable price." The shopkeeper said, "By all means, be my guest. Maybe you'll luck out and catch yourself a big one." Determined, the blonde turned and headed for the swamps, set on catching herself an alligator. Later in the day, the shopkeeper is driving home when he spots the young woman standing waist deep in the water, shotgun in hand. Just then, he sees a huge 9-foot alligator swimming quickly toward her. She takes aim, kills the creature, and with a great deal of effort hauls it onto the swamp bank. Lying nearby were several more of the dead creatures. The shopkeeper watches in amazement. Just then, the blonde flips the alligator on its back and, frustrated, shouts out, "Damn it! This one isn't wearing any shoes either!" A guy walks into a bar with his pet monkey. He orders a drink, and while he's drinking, the monkey starts jumping all over the place. The monkey grabs some olives off the bar and eats them, then grabs some sliced limes and eats them, then jumps up on the pool table, grabs the cue ball, sticks it in his mouth, and swallows it whole. The bartender screams at the guy, "Did you see what your monkey just did?" The guy says, "No, what? He just ate the cue ball off my pool table." "A hole," says the bartender. "Yeah, that doesn't surprise me," replies the patron. "He eats everything in sight, the little twerp. I'll pay for the cue ball and stuff." He finishes his drink, pays his bill, and leaves. 2 weeks later, he's in the bar again, and he has his monkey with him. He orders a drink, and the monkey starts running around the bar again. While the man is drinking, the monkey finds a maraschino cherry on the bar. He grabs it, sticks it up, pulls it out, and eats it. The bartender is disgusted. "Did you see what your monkey did now?" "Now what?" asks the patron. "Well, he stuck a maraschino cherry up his then pulled it out and ate it," says the barkeeper. "Yeah, that doesn't surprise me," replies the patron. "He still eats everything in sight, but ever since he ate that damn cue ball, he measures everything first." A new guy in town walks into a bar and reads a sign that hangs over the bar. "Free beer! Free beer for the person who can pass the test!" So the guy asks the bartender what the test is. Bartender replies, "Well, first you have to drink that whole gallon of pepper tequila. The whole thing at once, and you can't make a face while doing it. Second, there's a gator out back with a sore tooth. You have to remove it with your bare hands. Third, there's a woman upstairs who's never had an orgasm. You have to make things right for her." The guy says, "Well, as much as I would love free beer, I won't do it. You have to be nuts to drink a gallon of pepper tequila and then get crazier from there." Well, as time goes on, and the man drinks a few, he asks, "Where's that tequila?" He grabs the gallon of tequila with both hands and downs it with a big slurp, and tears streaming down his face. Next, he staggers out back, and soon all the people inside hear the most frightening roaring and thumping, then silence. The man staggers back into the bar, his shirt ripped and big scratches all over his body. "Now," he says, "where's that woman with the sore tooth?" A new guy in town walks into a bar and reads a sign that hangs over the bar. "Free beer! Free beer for the person who can pass the test!" So the guy asks the bartender what the test is. Bartender replies, "Well, first you have to drink that whole gallon of pepper tequila. The whole thing at once, and you can't make a face while doing it. Second, there's a gator out back with a sore tooth. You have to remove it with your bare hands. Third, there's a woman upstairs who's never had an orgasm. You have to make things right for her." The guy says, "Well, as much as I would love free beer, I won't do it. You have to be nuts to drink a gallon of pepper tequila and then get crazier from there." Well, as time goes on, and the man drinks a few, he asks, "Where's that tequila?" He grabs the gallon of tequila with both hands and downs it with a big slurp, and tears streaming down his face. Next, he staggers out back, and soon all the people inside hear the most frightening roaring and thumping, then silence. The man staggers back into the bar, his shirt ripped and big scratches all over his body. "Now," he says, "where's that woman with the sore tooth?" A lady walks into a bar and sees a really cute guy sitting at the counter. She goes over and asks him what he is drinking. "Magic beer," he says. She thinks he's a little crazy, so she walks around the bar. But after noticing that there is no one else worth talking to, she goes back to the man sitting at the bar and says, "That isn't really magic beer, is it?" "Yes, I'll show you." He takes a drink of the beer, jumps out the window, flies around the building 3 times, and comes back through the window. The lady can't believe it. I bet you can't do that again. Oh, yeah? He smirks. He takes another drink of beer, jumps out the window, flies around the building 3 times, and comes back through the window. She is amazed and immediately asks for a magic beer of her own. The guy says to the bartender, "Give her one of what I'm having." She gets her drink, takes a gulp of the beer, jumps out the window, and immediately plummets 30 stories down. The bartender looks at the guy and sighs, "You know something, Superman? You're a real asterisk hole when you're drinking."